Good morning. I'm Rick Diamond. I'm the pastor of Journey Imperfect Faith Community, and you are welcome at our gathering today. It is a gathering. We're not all in the same room, but we are in a room like this. And you are welcome to this safe space. It's important to our faith community that we are safe together. Sheltering in place in a way? Yep. Even when we're together, we're sheltering in place. We're being safe in a safe place where it doesn't matter what you believe, except that you're with us and we're together and we're with you. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are politically, what your beliefs are religiously, what your beliefs are in terms of how you think the world should work. We have simple things that we think are important, and everybody is welcome to bring who they are. Questions, non-belief, doubt, fear, all of it. All of it is welcome. All of it is safe. All of it is honored. I hope that you'll feel that this morning while you're watching this video, live stream cast thing. It's exciting. Can't wait to be together though. Does that make sense? Yep. We want to invite you to be connected to Journey Imperfect Faith Community, even though we can't be in the same room in our lighthouse building in Crestview. So go to our website, journeyifc.com, and we have lots of resources so that you can get to know more about Journey, see what's going on. It's also a place where you can give financially. It's a time of financial fear and worry, and we're all scrambling, and a lot of people don't know how they're going to pay their bills. Don't be worried that it's up to you to make Journey happen. It's up to all of us together and to God. If you can give, please do. We believe in how we use money in our faith community in a really healthy way. We give 10% of it away first to people in need and organizations that we support and believe in that do the good work of creating justice and loving mercy and kindness and compassion. I'm walking humbly with God. Speaking of walking humbly with God, we're going to breathe now as a way just to be still together with God and with each other.
Good morning, journeyers. This morning we're going to read a story about Jesus' friends feeling really abandoned and sad and lost after Jesus died. And so as we prepare to move into that space and to move into what Rick has to share with us this morning, I invite everyone to take a moment to breathe. So I like to, especially when I'm feeling really disconnected, I like to actually physically touch my heart and touch my belly. So I invite you to do that right now for just a minute. And while you're breathing, think about a time or times when you have felt really alone or abandoned or scared, lost. The plan that you had, it's not working. So think of that, and let's breathe into that for just a minute. Let's take some deep exhales. I invite you to hold that feeling, hold that space in your heart as we move forward. Salam.
Number 139 from the Jewish hymn book called Psalms. O Eternal One, you have explored my heart and know exactly who I am. You even know the small details, like when I take a seat and when I stand up again. Even when I am far away, you know what I am thinking. You observe my wanderings and my sleeping, my waking and my dreaming. And you know everything I do in more detail than even I know. You know what I'm going to say long before I say it. It is true, Eternal One, that you know everything and everyone. You have surrounded me on every side, behind me and before me, and you have placed your hand gently on my shoulder.
Even if I'm afraid to think to myself, there is no doubt that the darkness will swallow me. The light around me will soon be turned to night. You can see in the dark, for it is not dark to your eyes. For you, the night is just as bright as the day. Darkness and light are the same to your eyes, for you shape me inside and out. You knitted me together in my mother's womb, long before I took my first breath. I will offer you my grateful heart, for I am your unique creation filled with wonder and awe. You have approached even the smallest detail with excellence. Your works are wonderful. I will carry this knowledge deep within my soul.
It is the most amazing feeling to know how deeply you know me, inside and out. The realization of it is so great that I cannot comprehend it. Can I go anywhere apart from your spirit? Is there anywhere I can go to escape your watchful presence? If I go up into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in the realm of the dead, you are there. If I ride on the wings of morning, if I make my home in the most isolated part of the ocean, even then you will be there to guide me. Your right hand will embrace me, for you are always there.
Blessings, blessings, for life can get messy sometimes. Lucky, we lucky, we can all see the sunshine. Love and hope and faith struggle? Do you get knocked down, drown in your tears? Just remember that you make a difference. The world is better off that you are here. Love and hope and faith might feel long gone forever. When you think you lost your way, sister, please remember all the blessings in your day. Blessings, blessings. Though life can get messy sometimes, just remember all your blessings. To tell you true, that you are one of mine. All your blessings will tell you true that you are one of mine.
Good morning. From the final chapter of the Jesus story called The Gospel According to John. Jesus appeared to many of his followers in and around the capital city of Jerusalem, but then he went north to the Sea of Galilee. Simon the Rock, Thomas the twin, Nathanael, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other students were together where Jesus' ministry had begun, and they had joined Jesus' school. Simon the Rock said, "I'm going to go back to fishing. That's what I did before. Who wants to join me?" The others said they'd join him, but they fished all night and caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus was standing on the shore. He called out to them, "Friends, how's the fishing?" They didn't recognize that it was Jesus. "We didn't catch anything," they shouted back. Jesus called out, "I bet if you throw your net on the right side of the boat, you'll find some." So they did. And soon they were unable to haul the net in. It was full of fish. John said to Rock, "It's our teacher." Rock picked up his cloak from the deck, wrapped it around him, jumped in the water, and swam the 100 yards to shore. The other students followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." So Simon the Rock climbed back into the boat, untied the net, and dragged it on the shore. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew, somehow, that it was their teacher. So Jesus took some fish and cleaned them and cooked them over the fire. When the fish were ready, he took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon the Rock, "Simon, son of John, do you love me even more than these others here?" "Yes, teacher," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Then here is how you show it. Feed my lambs." Before long, Jesus said again, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Rock answered, "Yes, teacher, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Well then, take care of my sheep." And a third time Jesus said to him, "Simon, the son of John, do you love me?" Simon the Rock, stinging because Jesus kept asking him the same question, "Teacher, you know everything. You know I love you." Jesus said, "All right then, feed my sheep."
So, this beautiful story that Steve read about Jesus' students and friends who, after Jesus dies and the whole thing's confusion, just say, to hell with it, we're going back home. The ends of the different gospels are different because the different gospels have different agendas and different viewpoints and different things that they want to emphasize, like anybody else telling a story, right? When a group of people in a family or in an organization or in a church or in a business or in a friendship recount their experience about something that they shared, their experiences may have some common threads, but a bunch of the stuff that they share will be different because they are different people with different perspectives, and that's the way it is with the four gospels. And a few weeks ago we talked about Mark's gospel ending with this weird abrupt chunk that just says that the women on Sunday morning go to the tomb to prepare and finally close out the chapter by closing up Jesus's body that they're going to rub with oil and spices and cover up with fresh cloth and put into the tomb and close the stone. They think it's all over, and they get there and the stone is open and the body's not there, and they freak out, and then there's a guy in there with a white outfit on and he's bright as the sun or whatever, and he talks, and that's weird. And he says, go tell everybody that Jesus isn't here. He's going to go back up to Galilee where this whole thing started, and he's going to meet you there. He told you that a long time ago. And they run outside and they don't tell anybody. Who hasn't been there? Something happens that you didn't expect, and it's so strange, and maybe it's so wonderful that it freaks you out, or maybe it's so terrible that it freaks you out. But either way, it freaks you out. And so you just say, I got to get out of here. I got to go try and find something that makes sense to me. And in the John story, that was Mark, this is John. It's a whole different application of what happens when they just say, I got to go back to something that makes sense. John's gospel is unlike Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They are called the synoptics. They're similar to each other. They're built the same. They share some of the same sources. John's gospel is written with completely different source material in some ways, and a completely different kind of language and syntax and Greek. Its audience is different. It's written decades and decades and decades later. It's almost like it's a strange other, the other kid in the family. It's the other kid. It's really, really beautiful. And it's also pretty weird. And in Matthew especially, but also in Mark, Jesus talks like a Jewish rabbi. But in John, he talks like a Greek philosopher a lot of the time and says really strange, beautiful things that don't necessarily make any sense until lots later. And it's already hard enough to understand what Jesus was talking about in the first place in the earlier Gospels. But now, this is a gospel that's written in some ways to an audience that's much more Greek and less Jewish. And so Jesus speaks in different ways. Instead of saying, you're the light of the world, he says, I'm the light of the world. Instead of saying, you're the salt that flavors everything, he says, I'm the bread. All kinds of interesting parallels and also differences between John and the other three Gospels. There's a bug on the screen. Got it. So here's what's happening at the end of John as opposed to that very abrupt end at the end of the original end of Mark. Jesus talks at the Last Supper for chapter after chapter after chapter in John. It's where these big, gigantic, arcing stories are about, and all these discourses are about, don't worry about where I'm going to prepare a place for you, I'll come back and get you. And the foot washing story, and Simon Peter saying, no, you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus says, yes, I have to wash your feet. That stuff's in John. Then Jesus dies, and the disciples and the followers are crushed. Then Jesus appears and disappears, and appears and disappears, and appears and disappears. It's strange. In Luke's gospel, that's where last week's story, the story where the two friends are walking back out to their little village of Emmaus, appears. In this one, Jesus shows up Easter Sunday and pops in and pops out and pops in and pops out, and that's the end of John, except for one more chapter. The one more chapter is the one that we read from today. Surely Jesus' people, when they were brokenhearted and sad and scared and freaked out, and everything had fallen down, and death had come, and loss had come, and uncertainty had come, even though he had prepared them for this over and over and over and said this is what life is like, and that being willing to enter the place of not knowing and being willing to enter the place where everything doesn't make sense and you might not make it, that's how you find God. That didn't make it any easier, right? It was still hard and terrifying, and he was their teacher. That's how they knew God. That's how they knew what God was like. By what he said, how he behaved, what he did, what he enacted. And now he's gone. And then he shows up and then he disappears. I don't know if I can count on that. Then he shows up and says, you can put your hands on me and touch me. Did anybody have anything to eat? You can put your fingers in the holes in my wrists. And then he disappears. That's not much to build on, right? And so in that last chapter, Simon Peter, Petros, rock. Although I like to, when I say Simon the Rock, I always think of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. I mean, why would you not, right? It's awesome. So, The Rock, Simon the Rock, says, to hell with it. I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't count on this guy who pops in and pops out. I was, the first person to say yes to this. I'm married. I'm a grown-up. I don't need this. So I'm just going to go back to what I know. I'm going to go back to what is familiar. I'm going to go make some money and provide for my family. I mean, that whole thing about we want things to go back to normal. Back to normal. That's what Simon the Rock does. I'm going back to normal. I don't like this and I don't need it. And some of the other students who were from up north, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, and some others, I think Nathaniel, right? Say, okay, we'll go. So they pack up and head back north. The irony is that's not only where they're from, where their former life is, it's also where Jesus came and found them. It's where they were awakened. It's where they came loose from what they used to be. Be careful going back to the place where things got loose and got woogity. God is always waiting at the place where things got a little weird. God is in those fringy places. I mean, God's everywhere, right? What's happening is that we're more open when we're in the woogity, fringy, in-between places, what Celtic spirituality calls the thin places. In this case, not a geographical place, but a place in here. Simon the Rock and James and John Zebedee and other students of Jesus and followers move. They were going to be in Jerusalem where the movement had headed toward, and they were going to be part of the new thing that was going to happen, and it was going to be great. And now it's not. So they go back home. And I love that Simon the Rock says, you know what? I know how to fish. I mean, that's what I grew up doing. Generations of my family are fisher people. We live on this big, beautiful lake, and I know how to take care of my family. I'm going to go back and get my boat. It's still sitting there. Do you know what I mean? Like that whole, can't you just imagine that? I'm going back home and I'm going to go back to fishing. The last time I saw Jesus, he was being handed over and arrested and about to go be tortured and beaten. And I said, I didn't even know who he was. I ran. This isn't working for me. And then when he shows up all risen and glowing and strange and whatever, we didn't even have a conversation about how I felt about all that. At least it's not in the story. So I just need a reboot, man. I need a fresh start. I wonder if there was a small business recovery loan for the fishing business of James and John Zebedee, or of Simon and Andrew, the brothers. Gets back home, gets a crew, fits out the boat, gets the nets, makes sure the nets are ready, right? All that stuff that you would do if you were going to go back on the job site. And in this case, the job site is the lake. And they go to fish all night. And this is going to fix it, right? And this is going to bring everything back to normal. And we're going to feel okay. We're going to feel safe. Did you catch in the story that, in the story, that they catch nothing? They fish all night. Boy, that sucks. I was going to go back to the sure thing. And it wasn't sure at all. I love fishing. I'm not a commercial fisher person, but I love fishing. And fisher persons, anglers, have a joke which is, did you catch anything? Well, not much, but that's why they call it fishing, not catching, which is, basically saying, well, no, I didn't catch anything. I'm super pissed off about it and depressed. But you know that there's no sure way to catch fish. They're mysterious, and they hide, and they move. You can't see them, not without a really, really great depth finder, which I would love to have on the bass boat that I don't have, but I might someday. You never can tell. There's something really hard about fishing. You have to enter mystery, which is part of why I like it. You have to be with the water, and you have to be with the elements. You have to pay attention to the air. It's quiet. Fishing is quiet. You have to be with the fish, if that's a thing. And Simon Peter grew up doing this, and he knows how to do it. And James and John Zebedee know how to do this. They grew up doing it, and nobody catches a thing. And the net is empty. And I can't help but think that that's a beautiful image of what happens when we think we're going to have it all figured out and it falls apart. So we go back to the thing that was sure before we took the risk, and it still falls apart. And there is Jesus over on the shore with a charcoal fire. He's got some bread that he's made, bought from the store, showed up miraculously. I don't know how the risen Jesus gets loaves of bread. And he looks out at the boat 100 yards away and says that thing that people always say to fisher persons, to anglers, did you catch anything? How'd you do? Have any luck? The other funny thing that anglers say to console themselves when they don't catch anything is, well, bad day of fishing's always better than a good day working. Unless, of course, if fishing is your work. In which case, this was just a bad night all the way around. And so they holler back at this stranger, no, we didn't catch any fish last night. Now shut up. I don't know who you are, but that's kind of nosy, don't you think? We're already bummed out enough as it is, and we're exhausted. And Jesus calls to them 100 yards away. You know how you can hear people's voices across the water? Jesus calls out, you might try throwing the net on the other side of the boat. Never can tell. Might catch some fish that way. Now, when I'm fishing, I don't like advice or help from other people. I'm concentrating enough already, and I've been fishing a long time, and I know how to do it, and I do not need your help, so shut up. Plus, if I haven't been catching any fish, then I'm going to be embarrassed and frustrated. But Jesus has done this to this crew before. just a few years ago when he recruited them. It's a great little process of coming all the way back around in the story to where they started, where he says to a group of them, you guys might want to throw the net on the other side of the boat, and they haul in a zillion fish, and he's doing the same thing again and giving them the gift one more time. It's tricky. It's smart. So they throw the net in over the side of the boat, and they haul in so many fish that they can't bring the net up into the boat and spill them out onto the deck, like in Forrest Gump after the hurricane. And they freak out, and John says, you know what, this really reminds me of our teacher. What if that's him? Have you noticed that when you're outside doing things like a Zoom call or whatever, you can't control who's going to walk by, but it's too pretty a day to do this sermon inside. I hope you don't mind. So I'll just continue to keep the microphone close enough where we don't get distracted by the neighbors, which is kind of fun, actually. I like seeing people around. How about if I just turn this? Oh, that's pretty too. Still hear her. It's fine. Keep going. So they get all excited, and Simon the Rock puts his clothes back on and jumps in and swims 100 yards to the shore. It's pretty good. And nobody said, and the rest of the fellas pull the net up close to the boat and sail into the shore, and nobody says anything. Jesus says, I was thinking about cooking you guys breakfast. Would anybody like some breakfast? Do you have any fish? It's so funny. Does anybody have any fish? Did you guys catch anything? And Simon Peter, big and strong, right? This is part of what has made him so angry. I can't help but think that because he's big and strong, and that's his sense of himself, right? That there is a real heartbreak in the fact that he couldn't keep it all together. And that at the end he dropped the ball, fell apart, said he never knew Jesus, feels heartbroken. So Jesus came to find him. And they all come up. Simon the Rock brings the fish. It takes a while to clean fish and smoke the fish over the fire. So this is not a quick little thing that happens. It takes a few hours for everybody just to sit around and look at each other. But it says nobody wanted to say anything to Jesus. Do you know that feeling? Like, I don't want to acknowledge this. I don't know what to say. Maybe it'd be better just to say nothing. Which is funny because there are stories where when Simon Peter is unsure of himself, he just blabs. I feel like that sometimes too. Maybe you do too. I don't know what to do, so I just kind of start talking to fill the space. Nobody says anything. And so the risen Jesus, in whatever form he's in right now, whatever body he's taken on, says, so, Simon, son of John, you love me? Wow. There are a couple of ways to go with this one of which is, I quit. I already quit. Now I'm quitting even more. I'm getting up and walking off. To hell with this. There's another option, which is to say, yes, teacher, I do love you. I know I ran, but I love you. I know I got discouraged, but I love you. I know that I got lost, but I love you. Don't you wish that you could hear God say that when you get down, angry, discouraged, depressed, in despair, pissed off, crushed, confused? For me, one of the things that this story is telling the early church and everybody since then is, when you are like that, imagine that this is you. That you're Simon the Rock on the beach, and that Jesus, the risen Jesus, has come to find you. You thought you could get away from him, but my experience is that God is stubborn and will wait me out. That God will wait and wait and wait and find me. This is a time when we feel, hang on, there's another bug on here. This is a time when we feel like we just need things to go back to normal, and we may feel discouraged, and we may feel pissed off, and we may feel really terrified. We may be in a lot of grief. This story shows God coming to find us where we are. Exactly where we are. Not when we've cleaned up our act, not when we've said the right prayer, not when we've repented. Simon the Rock has done none of those things. You don't have to do any of those things. I don't have to do anything of those things. God loves you and loves me and wants to find us wherever we're hiding. And that beautiful thing that Psalm 139 said, I can't get anywhere where you're not going to find me, God. Whatever your shelter in place is like, God is there in your shelter. And whatever your despair or your questions or your doubt or your anger is like, whatever your boredom is like, whatever your plans are like, God is there making breakfast, giving you another chance to come closer. And all you got to say is, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I love you. I'm not thrilled right now, but I'm here. What to do then? Find somebody to help. The rest will take care of itself.
Hi, I'm Nathalie, a grateful journeyer. In Psalm 139, he's telling us that even if we isolate ourselves, God's presence is always here. I have 3 experiences I want to tell you about briefly, and that was true for me. In 7th grade, when I was a new girl, some wild girls took me under their wing. At home and at church, we were at church every time the doors were open, and I loved church. It was a confusing time for me and a shameful time, and I prayed to get out of it. God got me out of it. Later in college, when I was a freshman, I had a roommate confront me for quoting scriptures to her when she was suffering. She said, "Nathalie, I want my own answers." It made me think and realize that I myself had not experienced most of the scriptures that I was quoting to her. That was an awakening. 13 years ago, my husband of 33 years told me that he wanted a divorce. It was at a time when I thought our marriage was the best it had ever been. That was devastating. But 13 years later, we have a deeper, more loving, and healthier marriage than I could ever have imagined. Let's breathe together now, knowing that as long as we have breath, God is with us and available to guide us. Go now, knowing that you are one of God's most wonderful works, and God is always with you. Thank you.